I thought my son was finally taking care of his family when he announced that coastal vacation. 7 days at a luxury resort in California, while I stayed behind to handle spring planting on our 500-acre farm. But when Garrett called me that fourth morning, panic crackling through the phone line about frozen bank cards and unpaid resort bills, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: pure, cold satisfaction. Because while he was sipping cocktails by the Pacific Ocean, I had discovered his plan to steal my family's century-old farm and sell it to developers for $12 million. So when he begged me to fix whatever had gone wrong with the accounts, I answered with words no one expected. 3 weeks before that phone call, life on Meadowbrook Farm felt manageable despite everything I had endured since Frank's death 4 years earlier. The morning mist hung over our cornfields like a blessing as I walked the perimeter, checking fence lines and planning the season ahead. This land had belonged to my family since 1892, when my great-grandfather Samuel staked his claim during the last great homestead rush in Kansas. Frank and I had worked these fields together for 37 years of marriage, building something beautiful from the rich black soil and endless Kansas sky. We raised corn and soybeans, maintained a small herd of Black Angus cattle, and somehow managed to keep the farm profitable when so many others were selling to corporate agriculture companies. After Frank's heart attack took him from me, I wondered if I could continue alone. At 63, I was strong and determined, but farming is demanding work even for young people. That's when Garrett stepped forward. My 35-year-old son had been working construction in Topeka, struggling to make ends meet with his wife Bethany and their twin daughters Sarah and Emma. When he offered to move back to the farm and help me manage operations, I felt grateful beyond words. Finally, I thought Garrett was ready to embrace his agricultural heritage and secure his daughter's future on the land that had sustained our family for generations. Bethany seemed less enthusiastic about rural life, but she agreed to the arrangement. She was a pretty woman of 32, with shoulder-length auburn hair and a fondness for designer clothes that seemed out of place among the chicken coops and grain silos. Still, she enrolled the 8-year-old twins in our local elementary school and tried to adapt to small-town living. I renovated the main farmhouse for their family, while I moved into the smaller original homestead cottage that Samuel had built with his own hands. The cottage suited me perfectly. 2 bedrooms, a cozy kitchen with windows overlooking the vegetable garden, and a living room where Frank's favorite armchair still held the shape of his body. I found comfort in the simpler space, and it seemed fair that the growing family should have the larger house with its modern kitchen and 4 bedrooms. For the first few months, the arrangement worked beautifully. Garrett handled the heavy machinery and livestock management while I focused on crop planning and the business side of operations. The twins brought joy back to the property, racing through the cornfields and helping me collect eggs from our Rhode Island red chickens. Sarah showed particular interest in the vegetable garden, while Emma loved bottle feeding the orphaned calves we raised each spring. But gradually, subtle changes crept into our daily interactions. Garrett began making comments about my age and suggesting that certain tasks were becoming too difficult for me. When I climbed onto the combine harvester to check the settings, he would appear with concerned expressions and gentle suggestions that maybe I should let him handle the dangerous equipment. If I spent a long day repairing fence posts, he would mention how my back seemed stiff, and perhaps I was pushing myself too hard. Bethany's complaints started small, but grew more frequent. The nearest shopping center was 43 miles away in the county seat. Our internet service was slow and unreliable. There was nothing to do on weekends except attend church or visit neighbors. She missed her previous life in Topeka, where she had worked as a substitute teacher and enjoyed restaurants, movies, and cultural events that simply did not exist in our farming community. Then Patricia arrived for her first extended visit. Bethany's mother was a 58-year-old woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and an attitude that suggested she found everything about rural Kansas beneath her standards. She wore expensive pantsuits even for casual farm visits and carried herself like someone who had never touched dirt or seen a cow up close. Patricia made pointed comments about the isolation, the smell of manure, and what she called the waste of prime real estate on outdated farming methods. During that first 2-week stay, Patricia planted seeds of discontent that took root quickly. She questioned why valuable land was being used for agriculture when it could be developed into something more profitable. She researched property values in our area and made casual mentions of families who had sold their farms and moved to comfortable retirement communities. She suggested that I was clinging to the past instead of embracing practical solutions for my golden years. The pressure increased when Patricia proposed that I consider selling the farm and moving to a lovely senior living facility she had toured near Kansas City. The community offered social activities, healthcare services, and freedom from the demanding physical labor that was surely becoming too much for someone approaching 70. Of course, she was wrong about my age, but Patricia seemed to believe that anyone over 60 should automatically surrender independence and embrace institutional care. Garrett and Bethany supported Patricia's suggestions with increasing enthusiasm. They painted pictures of my future that included comfortable apartment living, organized activities, and professional assistance with daily tasks. They spoke about my advancing age as though it were a terminal illness rather than a natural part of life. Most troubling, they seemed to assume that I would automatically agree to their plans without considering my own wishes or attachment to the land. The conversation reached a breaking point in early March when Patricia announced she had won a week-long vacation package to a luxury resort in Marina del Rey, California. The prize included oceanfront accommodations, meals, and activities for a family of 5. She wanted Garrett, Bethany, and the twins to join her for what she described as a much-needed break from the stress of farm life. The timing could not have been worse. Spring planting was approaching, and there were dozens of urgent tasks that required immediate attention. The fields needed final preparation, equipment required maintenance and inspection, and we had to coordinate with our seed suppliers and fertilizer dealers. I protested that leaving during such a critical period would jeopardize our entire growing season. Garrett dismissed my concerns with a wave of his hand. He assured me that 1 week would not make any significant difference and that I was perfectly capable of handling routine tasks while they took a well-deserved vacation. Bethany added that I had managed the farm alone before they moved back and certainly could do so again for a few days. Patricia suggested that the break would give me time to seriously consider their retirement suggestions without family pressure. Despite my misgivings, I found myself agreeing to their plans. After all, they had sacrificed urban conveniences to help me maintain the farm. If Patricia had truly won this vacation package, it seemed selfish to deny them a rare opportunity for relaxation and family bonding. I told myself that a week of solitude might actually be refreshing after months of feeling pressured about my future. The night before their departure, I helped pack suitcases and prepared the twins for their first airplane ride. Sarah and Emma were thrilled about seeing the ocean, and their excitement was contagious. I hugged them tightly, promising to take good care of the animals while they were gone, and looking forward to hearing all their stories when they returned. But as I was loading their luggage into Garrett's pickup truck for the drive to the Wichita airport, I heard something that changed everything. Garrett was standing near the barn speaking quietly into his cell phone, while the others finished their preparations in the house. His voice carried in the still evening air, and his words made my blood run cold.
Yeah,
Getting the old lady out of the way for a week should be perfect timing, he said to whoever was on the other end. She'll be so busy with spring planting and equipment maintenance that she won't notice what we're doing. Once the paperwork is finalized and we have legal control, there won't be anything she can do to stop us. The voice continued with details that made my hands shake. Patricia has been documenting her decline for months, taking photos and notes about her confusion and unsafe behaviors. Dr. Sullivan is prepared to testify about her deteriorating mental condition. We should have guardianship established and the property transfer completed before she realizes what happened. The call ended with Garrett saying, "1 week and we'll own everything. The old woman will be in assisted living where she belongs, and we'll be $12 million richer." I stood frozen beside the truck, their suitcases growing heavy in my arms, as the full magnitude of their betrayal became clear. This was not a vacation. This was a carefully orchestrated plan to steal my farm, my home, and my independence. While I struggled alone with spring planting, they would be executing legal maneuvers designed to declare me incompetent and transfer ownership of my family's heritage to them. Sleep became impossible after overhearing that devastating phone conversation. I lay in my cottage bed until I heard Garrett's truck disappear down the gravel road toward the airport. Then I walked through the darkness to the main farmhouse. My hands trembled as I unlocked the door with my spare key, knowing that what I might discover could destroy any remaining hope for my family's future. Garrett had been using Frank's old office as his temporary workspace, claiming he needed privacy for managing farm business calls and correspondence. I had respected that boundary, trusting that he was handling legitimate agricultural concerns. Now I realized how naive that trust had been. The desk drawers revealed a carefully organized conspiracy that took my breath away. Printed email exchanges between Garrett and someone named Bradley Caldwell at Caldwell Development Group outlined plans to purchase Meadowbrook Farm for $12 million. The correspondence spanned 6 months, indicating that Garrett had been negotiating this sale since shortly after moving back to help me. The proposed development was a massive shopping complex that would destroy every acre of our farmland. Caldwell's emails described plans for a regional mall restaurant chains and residential subdivisions that would generate enormous profits for the development company. Garrett's responses showed eager cooperation with references to removing obstacles and securing clear title to the property. But the emails represented only the beginning of their deception. Deeper in the filing system, I found evidence of document forgery that left me gasping with shock. Garrett had been practicing my signature for months, filling legal forms that granted him power of attorney and established his authority to make financial decisions on my behalf. The forged documents were sophisticated, nearly identical to my actual handwriting. Patricia's role in the conspiracy became clear through a folder marked "Documentation of Decline." She had been systematically photographing me during moments of fatigue or distraction, creating a false narrative of mental deterioration. Pictures showed me looking confused while examining equipment manuals, appearing unsteady after long days of physical labor, and seeming disoriented during conversations with farm supply vendors. Each photograph was accompanied by detailed notes describing alleged symptoms of cognitive decline. Patricia claimed I had forgotten important conversations, made dangerous decisions about machinery operation, and shown increasing inability to manage complex financial transactions. Her documentation painted a picture of someone who was clearly unfit to handle property ownership or personal independence. The medical conspiracy proved even more shocking. Correspondence with our family physician, Dr. Robert Sullivan, revealed discussions about my supposed mental health concerns and physical limitations. Garrett had been feeding Sullivan false information about my behavior, describing incidents that had never occurred and symptoms I had never displayed. The doctor had apparently accepted these reports without conducting proper examinations or seeking my input about my own condition. Most devastating was a letter from Dr. Sullivan supporting a competency hearing scheduled for the week they would return from California. The letter cited concerning memory issues, unsafe living conditions, and impaired judgment regarding financial matters. It recommended immediate evaluation for guardianship placement and possible institutional care. Patricia was listed as a primary witness who could testify about my deteriorating mental state. The financial manipulation ran even deeper than the medical conspiracy. Bank statements showed that Garrett had been gradually transferring farm operating accounts into joint accounts with Bethany. Equipment loans had been secured using farm machinery as collateral with forged documents, claiming I had authorized the transactions. Our cattle were listed as collateral for a business loan that I had never approved or even known about. The vacation itself was revealed as another lie. Patricia had not won any contest or prize package. Email receipts showed that Caldwell Development had paid for the entire California trip as compensation for Patricia's cooperation in the conspiracy. The luxury resort meals and activities were essentially bribes designed to keep the family occupied while legal proceedings moved forward in Kansas. I sat in Frank's old chair surrounded by evidence of my son's betrayal, feeling emotions I had never experienced before. The anger was so intense it made my chest ache, but underneath the rage was a deeper pain that threatened to break my spirit entirely. This was not just theft or fraud. This was the systematic destruction of trust family bonds and everything I had believed about the people I loved most. But then I found something that changed everything. Hidden in Sarah's small backpack, forgotten during the packing rush, was a drawing she had made during art class at school. The crayon picture showed our farmhouse, the red barn cornfields stretching to the horizon, and stick figures labeled Grandma Cheyenne, Sarah, and Emma. At the top, in her careful 8-year-old handwriting, she had written, "Grandma's Farm Forever." Attached to the drawing was a note that made tears stream down my face. "Dear Grandma Cheyenne, I hope we never have to leave your magic place. You make everything better, and I love you more than chocolate chip cookies. Please don't ever go away. Love, Sarah." That innocent message from my granddaughter crystallized my resolve. This was not just about me or my property rights. This was about protecting the futures of 2 little girls who deserved better than parents willing to steal from their grandmother. Sarah and Emma had found joy and security on this farm, and I would not let anyone destroy that for them. The discovery phase was complete, but the real work was just beginning. I now understood exactly what I was fighting against, and I knew that winning would require careful planning, legal expertise, and the kind of strategic thinking that my enemies had underestimated. They saw me as a confused old woman who could be easily manipulated and discarded. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Instead of collapsing under the weight of betrayal, I felt something unexpected rising within me. A cold, calculating fury that sharpened my thinking and steeled my determination. If Garrett wanted to play games with legal documents and financial manipulation, then I would show him what real strategy looked like. The morning of their departure, I played my role perfectly. I hugged the twins goodbye with genuine love, kissed Bethany on both cheeks with apparent warmth, and told Garrett how proud I was that he was taking such good care of his family. Patricia received my most gracious farewell, complete with thanks for winning such a wonderful prize and wishes for safe travels. As soon as their taxi disappeared toward the airport, I began building my defense. My first call went to Margaret Holbrook, the 65-year-old attorney who had been Frank's childhood friend and our legal counsel for over 20 years. Margaret had handled our wills, property transfers, and business contracts with the kind of small-town competence that city lawyers often underestimated. Margaret arrived at the farm within 2 hours of my call, her silver hair pulled back in a practical bun, and her briefcase filled with forms that would protect everything I held dear. After reviewing the evidence I had discovered, she immediately filed emergency restraining orders on all farm assets and bank accounts. Any attempt to transfer property access funds or execute financial transactions would now require court approval and my personal authorization. The legal paperwork was just the beginning of my counterattack. Margaret contacted her network of attorneys and quickly arranged for independent medical and psychological evaluations that would establish my mental competence beyond any doubt. We scheduled comprehensive testing with physicians who had no connection to Dr. Sullivan or anyone in Garrett's conspiracy. While Margaret handled the legal aspects, I focused on documentation that would prove my continued ability to manage farm operations independently. I installed security cameras throughout the property, recording myself, performing complex tasks like equipment maintenance, financial planning, and livestock management. Each video included time and date stamps that would demonstrate my cognitive clarity and physical capabilities. The medical evaluations took place at the county hospital, where I underwent extensive testing designed to assess memory, reasoning, and decision-making abilities. The neurologist, Dr. Patricia Chen, put me through hours of cognitive assessments that confirmed what I already knew. My mind was sharp, my memory was excellent, and my judgment was sound. The physical examination revealed that while I showed normal signs of aging, I remained healthy and fully capable of independent living. Creating a proper paper trail required documenting years of successful farm management that Garrett had been trying to undermine. I gathered financial records showing consistent profitability, tax returns, demonstrating responsible stewardship, and correspondence with agricultural suppliers, proving my continued active involvement in all business decisions. The evidence painted a clear picture of someone who was not only competent, but highly successful in managing complex agricultural operations. My neighbors became crucial allies in building this defense. The Crawford family, who had farmed adjacent property for 3 generations, provided written statements about my competence and the farm's excellent condition. Tom Crawford, a man near my own age, testified to my knowledge of modern farming techniques and my reputation for sound business decisions. His wife, Linda, documented my active participation in community organizations and volunteer work that required organizational skills and clear thinking. The Martinez family, who owned our local farm supply store, contributed records showing my regular purchases of seeds, fertilizer, and equipment parts. Their documentation proved that I continued to make informed decisions about agricultural products and maintained relationships with multiple vendors. Maria Martinez noted that I always paid bills promptly and never showed any signs of confusion or memory problems during our business transactions. Pastor Williams from our rural Methodist church provided perhaps the most powerful testimony of all. He described my continued leadership in organizing church dinners, managing volunteer schedules, and handling financial responsibilities for various charitable projects. His letter emphasized my reputation for wisdom, integrity, and mental sharpness that had never wavered despite the challenges of widowhood and aging. But the most difficult part of this preparation involved confronting my own emotions about Garrett's betrayal. Alone in the cottage during those long spring evenings, I grieved not just for the son I thought I knew, but for the grandmother I had tried to become. I had wanted to be the wise elder who smoothed family relationships and provided security for the next generation. Instead, I was being forced to fight for my basic rights against my own child. The anger was easier to manage than the sadness. Fury gave me energy and focus, while grief threatened to paralyze me with questions about where I had gone wrong as a mother. Had I been too generous? Too trusting? Had I somehow failed to teach Garrett about honesty and family loyalty? The self-doubt was almost as painful as the betrayal itself. Margaret helped me understand that these questions, while natural, were not productive. Garrett's choices were his own responsibility, not the result of my parenting failures. Adult children who choose deception and theft are revealing their own character flaws, not their mother's shortcomings. My job now was to protect myself and my granddaughters, not to psychoanalyze decades of family dynamics. The emotional healing came gradually through work and purpose. Each day spent preparing my defense reminded me of my own strength and competence. I had survived my husband's death, learned new farming techniques adapted to changing agricultural markets, and maintained profitable operations during some of the most challenging years in recent memory. Garrett might see me as a week-old woman, but the evidence told a different story. One evening, while reviewing farm records in Frank's office, I discovered something that changed my entire perspective on the situation. Hidden in Frank's old desk behind a drawer that stuck and rarely opened completely was a sealed envelope marked, "For Cheyenne, open only if Garrett threatens the farm." Inside was a letter dated just 3 months before Frank's death. My husband had suspected that Garrett's financial problems were more serious than he admitted, and that his sudden interest in returning to the farm might not be entirely motivated by family loyalty. Frank had quietly investigated Garrett's business dealings and discovered a pattern of unpaid debts, questionable contracts, and angry creditors that suggested our son was in deeper trouble than we knew. The letter included copies of documents showing that Garrett had borrowed money using false information about his inheritance prospects. He had told lenders that he would soon inherit valuable farmland and used those promises to secure loans for his failing construction business. Frank had discovered these lies, but died before he could confront Garrett about them. Reading Frank's words from beyond the grave gave me a different perspective on recent events. My husband had seen warning signs that I had missed, and his concerns had been justified. Garrett's plan to steal the farm was not a sudden decision, but the culmination of years of financial desperation and moral decline. This knowledge somehow made the betrayal easier to bear because it meant I had not been foolish to trust my son. I had simply been unaware of how far his problems had progressed. Frank's letter ended with advice that guided my actions during those crucial preparation days. If you are reading this, then Garrett has chosen a path that threatens everything we built together. Remember that protecting our land and our legacy is not selfish. It is our responsibility to future generations. Be strong, be smart, and don't let anyone convince you that family loyalty means accepting betrayal. The poker face phase was nearly complete. I had gathered evidence, secured legal protection, established my competence, and built a network of allies who could testify to my abilities and character. The medical evaluations confirmed my mental sharpness, the financial records proved my business acumen, and the documentation showed years of successful independent living. Now I just had to wait for Garrett's call and the opportunity to show him that this supposedly confused old woman had been several steps ahead of his conspiracy from the very beginning. The transformation was complete. I was no longer the trusting mother he thought he could manipulate. I was a strategist prepared for battle. The phone rang at 7:37 in the morning on their 4th day in California. I was sitting in my kitchen sipping coffee and watching the sunrise paint our cornfields gold when Garrett's panicked voice crackled through the receiver. "Mom, what happened to the cards?" "We went to pay for breakfast and our credit cards were declined. I tried the ATM and it says our accounts are frozen. We can't withdraw a single cent, and the resort is threatening to kick us out if we don't settle our bill immediately. There must be some kind of banking error. Can you call and fix this?" The desperation in his voice was almost satisfying, but I kept my tone calm and conversational. "Oh, there's no banking error, Garrett. I froze all the accounts myself after I discovered your little plan to steal my farm and sell it to Caldwell Development." The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear ocean waves in the background. Then came a strangled sound that might have been his attempt to formulate a denial. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. You must be confused. We would never do anything to hurt you or the farm. This is just some misunderstanding that we can clear up when we get home." I found the emails, Garrett, all of them. The correspondence with Bradley Caldwell about the $12 million sale, the forged documents with my signature, Patricia's photo documentation of my supposed mental decline, Dr. Sullivan's letter supporting your competency hearing, and my personal favorite, the receipts showing that Caldwell Development paid for your entire vacation as a bribe for Patricia's cooperation. Another long silence followed by frantic whispering as Garrett apparently consulted with Bethany and Patricia about damage control strategies. "Mom, you're not thinking clearly. We can explain everything when we get back. Just unfreeze the account so we can come home and talk this through like a family." Actually, Garrett talking like a family is exactly what we're doing right now. See, families don't usually involve federal fraud investigations, but that's where we are. Margaret Holbrook has filed formal charges with the FBI Agricultural Crime Division. They're very interested in elder abuse conspiracies, especially ones involving forged documents and property theft. The panic in his voice escalated to near hysteria. "You can't do this. We're stuck here with no money and no way to get home. The twins are scared and confused, and Bethany is crying. How can you abandon your own granddaughters?" That accusation triggered the cold fury that had been building for days. "I'm not abandoning anyone, Garrett. You abandoned them when you decided to steal their inheritance and destroy their home for your own financial gain. You're the one who brought innocent children into your criminal conspiracy." While we were talking, I could hear chaos erupting in the background. Voices were raised, doors were slamming, and someone was definitely crying. The luxury resort that had seemed so appealing when Caldwell Development was paying for it had become a very expensive prison now that their credit cards were worthless. "Mom, please, we can work this out. Just give us enough money to get home and we'll forget this whole thing ever happened." "Oh, we're definitely not forgetting anything, Garrett. In fact, we're just getting started. You see, while you've been enjoying your bribery vacation, I've been busy. Independent medical evaluations confirmed my perfect mental health. Legal documents now protect every acre of this farm from unauthorized transfer, and federal investigators are very interested in your pattern of financial crimes." The conversation was interrupted by new voices in the background. Someone was knocking on their hotel room door, and Patricia's voice could be heard arguing with what sounded like resort security personnel about unpaid charges and potential fraud. "Garrett, it sounds like you have other pressing concerns right now. The resort management probably wants to discuss your mounting bills. Credit card fraud charges can be quite serious, especially when they involve luxury accommodations and expensive meals. This isn't over, Mom. We'll find a way to fight this. You can't just destroy your own family because you're paranoid about imaginary threats." "The threats weren't imaginary, son. They were documented in your own emails and financial records. But you're right about one thing, this isn't over. It's really just beginning." I hung up the phone and immediately called Margaret to report the conversation. She was pleased with how I had handled the confrontation, and confirmed that every word had been recorded automatically by the phone system she had installed. Garrett's admissions and threats would provide additional evidence for the criminal proceedings. Within 2 hours, my phone began ringing with calls from California. First came Bethany sobbing and claiming that she had never wanted to hurt me and had only gone along with Garrett's plans because he convinced her it was best for everyone involved. Her tears seemed genuine, but her story kept changing as she tried to minimize her own involvement. Patricia's call came next, and her approach was entirely different. She attempted to convince me that the entire conspiracy had been Garrett's idea, and that she had simply been trying to protect me from making a terrible mistake. According to her revised version of events, she had been documenting my supposed decline in order to help me recognize that I needed assistance not to support a competency hearing. Cheyenne, dear, I know how this must look, but you have to understand that we were only thinking of your best interests. Farming is such difficult work for someone your age, and we thought a comfortable retirement would make you happier. Patricia, I have recordings of Garrett discussing your role in documenting my decline and preparing for guardianship proceedings. Your concern for my happiness is touching, but the evidence suggests you were more interested in the $12 million than my well-being. Her tone shifted immediately from sweet concern to cold calculation. You're making a serious mistake, Cheyenne. We have documentation of your mental deterioration and medical testimony about your incompetence. Fighting this will only make things worse for everyone, especially the children. Actually, Patricia, I have independent medical evaluations confirming my excellent mental health and complete competency. Dr. Sullivan's letter has been reported to the Medical Licensing Board for investigation of false statements. And bringing the children into this conversation is particularly inappropriate, considering that you helped plan to steal their inheritance. That call ended abruptly with Patricia muttering threats about lawsuits and countersuits that we both knew were empty bluster. The most heartbreaking call came from the twins themselves. Sarah's small voice was shaky with tears as she tried to understand why Mommy and Daddy were fighting with resort people and why they couldn't buy food or souvenirs anymore. Emma wanted to know when they were coming home and whether the farm animals missed them. Grandma Cheyenne, are you angry at us? Mommy says you won't let them use the money cards, and now we can't go to the beach or the gift shop. Oh, sweethearts, I'm not angry at you at all. You didn't do anything wrong. This is a grown-up problem that Mommy and Daddy created, and it has nothing to do with how much I love you both. But why can't we come home? I miss the chickens and the baby cows, and I want to help you plant the garden like you promised. You will help me with the garden, Emma, I promise. But first, the grown-ups have to fix some problems that got very complicated. By evening, the situation in California had deteriorated completely. Resort security had confiscated their luggage as collateral for unpaid bills exceeding $15,000. Bethany had been caught attempting to use one of the twins' college savings accounts to cover expenses, only to discover that Frank and I had established those funds as separate trusts years earlier. Garrett's final call of the day came at nearly midnight. His voice was hoarse with exhaustion and defeat as he made one last attempt at manipulation. Mom, I'm going to be arrested. The resort called the police about credit card fraud, and there's apparently a federal warrant waiting for me in Kansas. Patricia is blaming everything on me. Bethany won't stop crying, and the twins keep asking questions I can't answer. Is this really what you want? Your own son in prison and your granddaughters traumatized? What I want, Garrett, is justice. Not revenge, not cruelty, just consequences for the choices you made. You decided to steal from your own mother. You forged legal documents. You conspired to have me declared incompetent and imprisoned in an institution. Those actions have legal penalties that you're going to face. But what about Sarah and Emma? They don't deserve this. You're absolutely right. They don't deserve to have parents who would steal their inheritance and destroy their home for money. They deserve better than adults who would involve them in criminal conspiracies and traumatize them with the consequences. That's something you should have considered before you started this mess. The trap had sprung exactly as planned, but I felt no joy in Garrett's downfall. There was satisfaction in the justice of it, relief that my property was protected, and determination to see the legal process through to completion. But there was also profound sadness for the family relationships that had been destroyed, and the innocent children who were paying the price for their parents' greed and dishonesty. The transformation was complete. The trusting mother was gone, replaced by a strategist who understood that sometimes protecting the people you love means fighting against the people you love. The next phase would bring public exposure and legal consequences, but the hardest part was already over. I had looked evil in the face and refused to be its victim. The morning brought news that Garrett had been arrested at Los Angeles International Airport while attempting to board a flight using his construction company's emergency credit card. Federal agents had been tracking his activities since Margaret filed the fraud reports, and his desperate attempt to flee California provided additional charges for his growing legal troubles. The arrest became regional news when reporters discovered the agricultural fraud angle and the luxury resort setting. Kansas man arrested for elder abuse conspiracy ran in newspapers across 3 states, complete with details about forged documents and development company bribes. The story captured public attention because it combined family betrayal with the sympathetic image of an elderly widow protecting her farm from unscrupulous relatives. Back in California, resort management faced their own crisis as Bethany could not provide adequate care or financial support for the twins. Child Protective Services became involved when Patricia's credit cards were also maxed out, and no family member could demonstrate the ability to handle basic needs like food, shelter, and transportation. The social workers who interviewed Sarah and Emma discovered that the children had been traumatized by days of adult arguments, financial chaos, and complete uncertainty about their future. Both girls expressed desperate longing to return to their grandmother and the farm they considered home. Their innocent pleas for stability broke the hearts of everyone involved in their case. I flew to California immediately using the documentation Margaret had prepared to establish my legal standing and financial stability. The contrast between my situation and that of Garrett's family could not have been clearer. While they faced criminal charges and financial ruin, I arrived with clean background checks, medical evaluations confirming my competency, and bank statements showing more than adequate resources to care for the children. The custody hearing was brief but decisive. Judge Catherine Morrison reviewed the evidence of parental neglect and criminal conspiracy, then awarded me temporary guardianship of Sarah and Emma, pending resolution of the criminal cases against their parents. The twins cried with relief when they learned they could come home with me, and their joy provided the only bright moment in an otherwise devastating legal proceeding. Our flight back to Kansas became a healing journey for all 3 of us. Sarah and Emma sat beside me holding my hands and chattering excitedly about seeing the farm animals again. They had been frightened by the adult chaos surrounding them, but resilient enough to bounce back once they felt safe and loved again. Their innocence reminded me that this fight was ultimately about protecting children from the consequences of adult failures. The homecoming was everything I had hoped it would be. The twins raced through the farmhouse checking on their belongings and rediscovering toys they had missed during the traumatic California trip. Emma ran directly to the barn to visit the calves she had been bottle feeding before the vacation, while Sarah inspected her corner of the vegetable garden to see how much the seedlings had grown. Community support surrounded us from the moment we returned. The Crawford family had maintained our livestock and equipment during my absence, refusing any payment for their neighborly assistance. Maria Martinez had stocked my refrigerator with groceries and prepared meals for our first week back. Pastor Williams organized a prayer circle for healing and protection that brought tears to my eyes with its genuine warmth, but the legal consequences for the conspirators were just beginning. Bethany, facing felony charges as a co-conspirator, attempted to negotiate a plea agreement by claiming that Garrett had manipulated her through promises of financial security and threats about their family's future. Her attorney argued that she had been a victim of domestic psychological abuse rather than a willing participant in criminal activity. The evidence, however, told a different story. Email records showed Bethany actively participating in plans to document my supposed mental decline and celebrating the anticipated windfall from selling the farm. Her teacher training had given her knowledge about recognizing genuine cognitive impairment, making her false documentation particularly damning from a legal perspective. Patricia faced the most serious charges because her role as the primary documenter of my supposed decline made her the conspiracy's foundation. Federal prosecutors argued that her systematic creation of false evidence constituted aggravated elder abuse with intent to commit fraud. Her age and lack of prior criminal history might have generated sympathy, but the calculated nature of her deception eliminated any judicial mercy. The development company found itself under federal investigation for bribery and corruption in agricultural land acquisition. Bradley Caldwell and his associates faced charges for attempting to influence property transfers through illegal payments and conspiracy with fraudulent guardianship proceedings. Their reputation in legitimate development projects was permanently damaged, and regulatory agencies began reviewing all their previous transactions. Dr. Sullivan's medical license came under immediate review when investigators discovered his letter supporting competency proceedings without proper examination or documentation. The state medical board found evidence of previous questionable diagnoses that aligned suspiciously with family financial disputes. His practice faced malpractice suits from other families who suspected similar manipulation of medical opinions for personal gain. Most satisfying was the public exposure of the conspiracy's full scope. Local newspapers published detailed accounts of the fraud scheme, including photographs of the forged documents and excerpts from the email correspondence. The coverage generated widespread sympathy for my situation and admiration for the strategic response that had protected both my property and my granddaughters. The twins adjusted to their new permanent living situation with remarkable resilience. We established routines that included homework help, farm chores, appropriate for their age, and evening conversations about their feelings regarding their parents' choices. Sarah showed particular interest in learning about legal protections for family farms, while Emma focused on animal care and agricultural science. Child therapy sessions helped them process the trauma of witnessing adult deception and financial chaos. Dr. Rachel Morris, a specialist in family betrayal trauma, worked with both girls to understand that their parents' actions reflected adult problems rather than any failure on their part. The farm environment provided natural healing through physical activity, animal responsibility, and connection to the land. The financial recovery exceeded my expectations as civil court proceedings awarded additional damages from all co-conspirators. Garrett's construction business assets were seized to pay restitution, Patricia's retirement savings were frozen for victim compensation, and Bethany lost her teaching pension contributions to the settlement fund. The twins' college accounts, which had been targeted for theft, were reinforced with punitive damages that guaranteed their educational futures. Margaret worked with state legislators to strengthen protections against elder financial abuse, using our case as an example of needed legal reforms. The resulting legislation, which we privately called Frank's Law, increased penalties for forgery in guardianship proceedings and required additional safeguards for agricultural property transfers involving elderly owners. The community rallied around agricultural preservation efforts sparked by publicity about the development threat. Local farmers organized legal defense funds to help elderly property owners resist fraudulent schemes, and state agricultural agencies created educational programs about protecting family farms from exploitation. The exposure phase revealed not just the conspiracy's criminal nature, but also the broader community values that my defense had protected. This was not simply about one woman's property rights, but about preserving agricultural heritage, family integrity, and the fundamental principle that elderly people deserve respect and protection rather than exploitation by their own children. But the most important exposure was personal. Sarah and Emma learned that adults who truly love children protect them from harm rather than involving them in schemes that could destroy their security. They discovered that standing up to wrongdoing requires courage, but ultimately brings peace and safety that make the struggle worthwhile. The public phase was complete, but the legal proceedings would continue for months. Criminal trials lay ahead, along with civil litigation and regulatory investigations that would determine final penalties for everyone involved. The foundation had been laid for total justice, and nothing could prevent the complete collapse of those who had chosen greed over family loyalty. The federal courthouse in Wichita became the stage for justice that exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. Garrett's trial began in late summer, and the evidence presented by federal prosecutors painted a devastating picture of calculated elder abuse that had been planned for over 2 years. The prosecution's case relied heavily on Garrett's own electronic communications, which revealed not just the farm conspiracy, but a pattern of financial crimes stretching back to his construction business failures. Investigators had discovered that he had borrowed money from multiple lenders using false information about his inheritance prospects, effectively defrauding creditors while plotting to steal the very property he had promised to inherit. Testimony from computer forensics experts revealed that Garrett had researched guardianship laws and elder abuse procedures for months before implementing his plan. Browser histories showed extensive searches for information about declaring elderly relatives incompetent, transferring property through fraudulent guardianship, and hiding assets during federal investigations. The premeditation was undeniable and horrifying. Character witnesses painted a picture of a man whose financial desperation had consumed any moral considerations about family loyalty or ethical behavior. Former business associates testified about unpaid debts, abandoned construction projects, and increasingly desperate attempts to generate quick profits through questionable means. The farm conspiracy represented the culmination of years of moral decline, driven by gambling debts and failed investments. The sentencing hearing brought closure that I had not expected to feel. Judge Harrison Caldwell, no relation to the development company despite the shared name, imposed a 5-year federal prison sentence that reflected both the seriousness of the crimes and the aggravating factor of targeting an elderly family member. Garrett's tearful apology rang hollow after months of evidence about his calculated deception. The judge's comments during sentencing captured the community's feelings about elder abuse. Mr. Thompson, you targeted the woman who gave you life, raised you with love, and trusted you with her most precious possessions. The violation of that trust represents one of the most serious breaches of human decency that this court has witnessed. Garrett's business assets were liquidated to pay restitution and legal fees, leaving him with nothing but debt and a federal conviction that would follow him for the rest of his life. His contractor's license was permanently revoked, and the criminal record made future employment in construction or any position requiring trust virtually impossible. Patricia's trial followed 2 weeks later, and her defense strategy of claiming ignorance about the conspiracy's criminal nature collapsed under prosecutorial scrutiny. Email evidence showed her researching legal procedures for competency hearings and discussing strategy for documenting mental decline that she knew to be fabricated. The 68-year-old woman's age generated some initial sympathy, but testimony about her systematic deception eliminated any judicial mercy. Dr. Morris testified about the psychological damage that false competency claims inflict on elderly victims, describing the terror and helplessness that Patricia's documentation was designed to create. Patricia received an 18-month federal sentence with additional restitution requirements that consumed her retirement savings and forced the sale of her suburban home. Her social destruction was even more complete than her financial ruin, as former friends and family members learned about her role in the conspiracy through detailed media coverage. The community response was swift and unforgiving. Patricia lost her volunteer positions with charitable organizations, her book club membership, and her standing in the social circles she had cultivated for decades. Adult children from her previous marriage cut all contact, refusing to associate with someone capable of such calculated betrayal. Bethany's case presented more complexity because of her cooperation with federal investigators and her role as mother to Sarah and Emma. Her attorney negotiated a plea agreement that resulted in 2 years of probation and extensive community service in exchange for testimony against Garrett and Patricia. The probation terms included supervised visitation with the twins and mandatory counseling for financial decision-making and family relationship skills. Bethany was required to maintain stable employment and housing before any expansion of custody rights could be considered. Her teaching license was suspended for 3 years, requiring career retraining and professional rehabilitation. Most importantly for Sarah and Emma, the custody arrangement gave them stability with me while maintaining some connection to their mother under court supervision. Family therapy sessions helped all 3 females navigate the complex emotions surrounding parental betrayal and necessary boundaries for future relationships. Dr. Sullivan's medical license suspension became permanent when the state medical board discovered additional cases of questionable diagnoses supporting financially motivated guardianship proceedings. 3 other families came forward with similar stories of elderly relatives being declared incompetent based on Sullivan's evaluations that contradicted other medical opinions. The doctor's practice was closed permanently, and he faced multiple malpractice suits that would consume any remaining professional assets. Criminal charges were filed for medical fraud, adding legal jeopardy to his professional destruction. His reputation in the medical community was permanently destroyed by evidence of systematic corruption spanning several years. Caldwell Development faced federal RICO charges for operating an organized conspiracy to acquire property through elder abuse and fraudulent guardianship proceedings. Investigators discovered similar schemes in 4 other states, all following the same pattern of bribing family members to create false incompetency documentation. Bradley Caldwell and 2 associates received federal sentences ranging from 3 to 7 years, along with corporate fines that forced the company into bankruptcy. Regulatory agencies across the Midwest began investigating all previous Caldwell transactions involving elderly property owners, creating legal exposure that extended far beyond our specific case. The broader impact satisfied my desire for systematic change that would protect other families from similar exploitation. Agricultural crime units received additional funding and training specifically focused on elder abuse cases involving family farms. banking regulations were strengthened to prevent unauthorized access to elderly customers' accounts by adult children. Legal aid organizations developed new programs to assist elderly property owners in protecting their assets from family-based fraud schemes. The publicity surrounding our case generated donations and volunteer support for these protective services, creating lasting benefits for vulnerable seniors across rural communities. Perhaps most satisfying was the financial recovery that exceeded all expectations. Civil judgments against all co-conspirators totaled nearly $2 million in damages and penalties, creating educational and improvement funds that would benefit the farm and the twins' futures for decades to come. The farm itself became a model of successful agricultural preservation and family healing. Conservation easements protected the property from any future development threats, while providing tax benefits that improved our annual operating margins. Historical landmark designation brought additional protections and modest tourism revenue from visitors interested in agricultural heritage. But the personal recovery proved even more valuable than the financial gains. Sarah and Emma thrived in an environment free from adult manipulation and financial anxiety. Their academic performance improved dramatically once they felt secure about their living situation and their grandmother's permanent presence in their lives. The destruction of the conspiracy had been complete, but the reconstruction of trust and family bonds required more delicate work that would continue for years. The twins needed time to process their parents' betrayal and to build confidence in adult relationships based on honesty rather than manipulation. The legal phase was ending, but the healing phase would define our family's future. Justice had been served with precision and finality, but mercy and forgiveness would require more complex navigation as the girls grew older and began asking harder questions about their parents' choices and motivations. 1 year after that devastating phone call from California, I found myself sitting on the front porch of our farmhouse, watching Sarah and Emma chase fireflies across the yard as twilight painted the Kansas sky in shades of gold and purple. The corn was knee-high and healthy, the cattle were thriving in summer pastures, and the sound of children's laughter had returned to Meadowbrook Farm. The transformation in our daily lives exceeded anything I had imagined during those dark days of discovery and legal battles. Sarah and Emma had not simply adjusted to living with their grandmother. They had flourished in ways that revealed how much their parents' anxiety and deception had affected their emotional development. Free from adult manipulation and financial uncertainty, both girls had blossomed into confident, curious children eager to learn about farming nature and their family heritage. Sarah's academic performance had improved so dramatically that her teacher recommended advanced placement in mathematics and science programs. Her interest in agricultural law, sparked by our legal battles, led to participation in youth debate teams and mock trial competitions. She spoke passionately about protecting family farms and helping elderly people defend themselves against financial exploitation. Emma's natural affinity for animal husbandry had evolved into serious study of veterinary science and sustainable farming techniques. She maintained detailed records of our livestock health, feed efficiency, and breeding programs with the precision of a trained agricultural scientist. Local farmers began seeking her advice about calf rearing problems and pasture management strategies. The farm operation itself had become more profitable and efficient than it had been even during Frank's lifetime. The publicity surrounding our legal case had attracted attention from agricultural universities and sustainable farming organizations interested in our conservation practices and heritage preservation methods. We became a demonstration farm for traditional techniques combined with modern environmental stewardship. Margaret Holbrook had become much more than our family attorney. She was now the girls' honorary aunt and my closest confidant in navigating the complex emotions surrounding family betrayal and forgiveness. Her legal expertise had been crucial during the criminal proceedings, but her friendship and wisdom proved even more valuable in the healing process that followed. Pastor Williams provided spiritual guidance that helped all three of us understand forgiveness as a process rather than a single decision. His counseling emphasized that forgiving someone doesn't require trusting them again or pretending their actions were acceptable. True forgiveness, he taught us, means releasing the anger that can poison our own hearts while maintaining healthy boundaries that prevent future harm. The community support that had emerged during our crisis had evolved into lasting relationships that enriched our lives in unexpected ways. The Crawford family became extended family with regular Sunday dinners and shared holiday celebrations. Tom Crawford taught the girls advanced farming techniques, while Linda Crawford shared family recipes and helped with school projects. The Martinez family had become business partners in a small organic produce venture that supplied restaurants in the county seat with fresh vegetables from our expanded garden operation. Maria's expertise in small business management complemented my agricultural knowledge, creating a profitable sideline that demonstrated the farm's continued viability and innovation. Professional recognition had followed our successful defense against the development conspiracy. I received invitations to speak at agricultural conferences about family farm preservation and elder rights protection. My presentations emphasized practical strategies for protecting assets while maintaining family relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. The educational impact of our story had exceeded my expectations when the University of Kansas Law School developed a case study program based on our experience. Students learned about elder abuse recognition, agricultural property protection, and the intersection of family dynamics with legal strategies. Several graduates had chosen careers in elder law specifically because of exposure to our case. Legislative changes resulting from our advocacy efforts had created lasting protections for elderly farmers throughout the Midwest. Frank's Law had been adopted by 6 states, strengthening requirements for guardianship proceedings and creating additional safeguards for agricultural property transfers involving elderly owners. The most challenging aspect of our new life involved navigating relationships with Garrett and Bethany as they began serving their sentences and participating in court-mandated rehabilitation programs. The girls maintained some contact with their mother through supervised visits and monitored phone calls, but these interactions required careful management to protect their emotional stability. Bethany's rehabilitation had included intensive therapy for financial decision-making disorders and family relationship dysfunction. Her letters to the girls showed genuine remorse and growing understanding of how her choices had harmed innocent children. The supervised visits were gradually increasing in frequency as Bethany demonstrated consistent behavior change and emotional stability. Garrett's situation remained more complicated because his sentence was longer and his acceptance of responsibility was incomplete. His letters alternated between expressions of regret and attempts to minimize his culpability by blaming financial desperation and poor advice from Patricia. The girls rarely asked about their father, and I didn't push them to maintain contact they weren't ready to handle. Patricia had been released from federal prison, but remained estranged from all family members, including her own adult children from previous relationships. Her social and financial destruction had been so complete that she had relocated to another state and was living in subsidized housing for elderly people with limited income. The twins showed no interest in any contact with their maternal grandmother. The financial recovery had created opportunities that transformed our family's future prospects, beyond anything I had imagined during those frightening early days. The civil judgments and restitution payments had funded college accounts for both girls that would cover graduate education at any institution they chose to attend. Farm improvements financed by the legal settlements had increased both productivity and sustainability. New equipment building renovations and conservation measures had positioned Meadowbrook Farm as a model agricultural operation that would remain profitable and environmentally responsible for generations to come. But the most valuable recovery was emotional rather than financial. The girls had learned that adults who truly love children protect them from harm rather than involving them in schemes that could destroy their security. They understood that family loyalty means supporting each other's growth and happiness, not enabling destructive behavior through silence and complicity. My own healing had required confronting difficult truths about parenting trust and personal responsibility. I had learned to distinguish between loving someone and enabling their harmful choices. Garrett would always be my son, but protecting myself and my granddaughters required maintaining boundaries that prevented him from causing additional damage. The wisdom gained through this experience extended beyond our family situation to broader questions about aging independence and community responsibility. I had discovered that protecting elderly people from exploitation requires not just legal safeguards, but cultural changes that value wisdom and experience rather than assuming incompetence based on age. Speaking to community groups about our experience had taught me that many families struggle with similar dynamics, involving financial pressure, generational conflict, and competing values about property and inheritance. The difference between healthy family planning and exploitative schemes often depends on whether elderly family members are included as respected participants or targeted as vulnerable obstacles. Children's therapy had revealed insights about resilience and healing that surprised all the professionals involved. Dr. Morris had expected longer-term trauma effects from witnessing parental betrayal and financial chaos, but Sarah and Emma's recovery had been remarkably complete once they felt secure and valued. Their resilience taught me that children are stronger than adults often assume, especially when they're given honest information, appropriate to their developmental level, and consistent reassurance about their own safety and worth. Protecting children from difficult truths is less important than providing them with trusted adults who can help them understand and process challenging experiences. The farm itself had become a source of healing that extended beyond our immediate family. Educational tours brought urban school children to experience agricultural life and learn about food production, environmental stewardship, and rural culture. Many visitors left with deeper appreciation for farming families and greater awareness of the challenges facing agricultural communities. As I watched Sarah and Emma playing in the same yards where Frank and I had raised Garrett, I thought about the circular nature of life and the responsibility each generation has to protect what matters most for future families. The land would endure, the farming traditions would continue, and the lessons learned through our struggle would guide better decisions for decades to come. The evening air carried the scent of growing corn and blooming wildflowers as the girls finally tired of chasing fireflies and settled beside me on the porch swing. Sarah leaned against my left shoulder while Emma curled up on my right side, both of them chatty and content. After another day of summer freedom on the farm, they now called home without qualification or uncertainty. "Grandma Cheyenne," Sarah said thoughtfully, "do you think Mommy will ever be able to live with us again?" "I don't know, sweetheart. That depends on whether she learns to make better choices and becomes the kind of person who puts your well-being first instead of money and her own wants." "What do you think about that?" "I think maybe she needs more time to learn how to be a good mommy, but I'm happy here with you and I don't want anything to change right now. Emma nodded agreement. The animals need us, and the garden needs us, and you need us too. This feels like where we're supposed to be. Those words spoken with the simple wisdom of children who had found security after chaos captured everything I had fought to protect. This farm, this life, this sense of belonging and purpose, these were the things worth defending against anyone who would steal them for money or convenience. As we sat together in the gathering darkness surrounded by the sounds and smells of a working farm in summer, I felt profound gratitude for the strength I had discovered within myself and the family bonds that had proven stronger than betrayal. The struggle had been painful, but it had led to a life richer and more meaningful than anything I could have imagined during those fearful early days. The future stretched ahead with promise and possibility. The girls would grow up understanding their own worth and their responsibility to protect what matters most. The farm would continue serving as both home and legacy preserved for generations who would appreciate its value beyond mere dollars and real estate development. Most importantly, we had learned that love without boundaries enables harm, while love with healthy limits creates safety and growth. Family loyalty means supporting each other's best choices and happiness, not accepting destructive behavior in the name of unconditional acceptance. The fireflies continued their ancient dance across the summer evening as 3 generations of women sat together on a porch built by hands that understood the value of creating something lasting and beautiful. The past had been faced and forgiven, the present was secure and joyful, and the future belonged to those wise enough to protect what truly matters. I hope this story has given you something to think about regarding the relationships in your own life. Have you ever faced a situation where family loyalty conflicted with protecting yourself or others from harmful behavior? How did you handle the balance between love and boundaries? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences might help other viewers who are facing similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help others find it. Subscribe to hear more stories about family strength and resilience, and share this with anyone who might benefit from knowing that it's possible to stand up for yourself while still maintaining your values and dignity. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and I wish you the wisdom to recognize your own worth and the courage to protect what matters most in your life. Until next time, remember that love and boundaries can coexist, and sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's harmful choices.